Well, welcome to the Business Environmental Series. So today's program is all about resource conservation. We're going to have three speakers. I'm going to start it off basically talking about recycling, repurposing, composting, talk about some local resources, planning events, and then how to do very simple challenges and how to do audits. If for some reason you can't stay to the very end of the series, there is a very simple audit sheet in the back of how to do a trash and recycling audit. This isn't a composition. This isn't like getting out all the waste and spreading it out. This is a simple sheet that you can use to make sure you're not overpaying for trash or recycling. We use this sheet, PSD use this sheet, and anybody, your janitors can go out and do it. You don't even need to speak English to do it. It's a little box and they can shade it in, and the whole idea is you use this sheet to go out the day before your trash is collected, and you just fill it in and see if you're being overcharged, because a lot of businesses overpay for their trash services. So you want to always think about that. So when we did this at the city, I would say a third of our buildings, the first year we saved $5,000. So it's really important to think about, the number one thing is the frequency about how much your trash gets picked up, because every time a hauler has to come, they're paying for the gas. So usually when you have a service, say it's 3 times a week and you have different sizes, you can always downsize your bin, but you want to really think about how many times they come to your facility. So definitely take one of those audit sheets and try it. And if you have any questions, always feel like you can call me at the city or call Susie Gordon. Suze, could you stand up for a second? So Susie works in solid waste. She's a great resource. We have some great resources in the room. Rose Watson is here, John Anderson. And so we're going to have time at the end to have some facilitated conversations so you can sort of pick the brains of the experts. Okay, I'm going to start off with some numbers, and this is just to give you some background about our community. So every year we collect data. We collect data from voluntary recyclers. We collect data from the licensed haulers, and we don't have 2010 obviously done now, but basically these are the two areas that we look at. And we're doing pretty well. Trash is going down, which is what you want it to do, and recycling is going up. A lot of times what happens in a business is people are doing very well in recycling and they don't look at that other end of bringing your trash down. And the whole idea is you really want to make sure your recycling is going up, but at the same time your trash is getting reduced. So don't just think about, when you're looking at managing your solid waste, don't just think about recycling. So in our community, 75% of the trash volume is from businesses, and that's why we have a program like this. I mean, we have the pay-as-you-throw ordinance that deals with residential, but it's a really small part of the pie. So businesses can make a huge difference in terms of our diversion rates. So if you're not familiar with diversion rates, basically you take your solid waste and your recycling, you put them together, and then you say what percentage are we diverting or recycling. So Fort Collins as a whole in 2009 had a 38% diversion. The state of Colorado generally has a very low diversion. You hear different cities around the country, like San Francisco, you hear anything from like 60 to 75%. A lot of times why that happens is different cities count different things. And so, it's really hard to compare how we're doing against, say, a San Francisco, because they might be counting tires, they might be counting construction debris. So it's not apples to apples. But at 38%, I think we could do a lot better. Two of the things that work against us in Colorado is we have really low tipping fees. And if you're not familiar with that, that's basically how much a landfill charges. So in an area like Vermont, I moved here from Vermont about 25 years ago. Vermont is a really small state, doesn't have a lot of land, and so land is at a premium, so they have a much higher tipping fee. So that gives people more of an incentive to recycle. The other things that make it difficult here is it's a really arid climate. So A lot of landfills will capture methane. That's a way to make a profit. In an arid climate like ours, it's very difficult to do, although they are trying it at the Larimer landfill. That was one of the Colorado Carbon Fund's first projects. So the Colorado Carbon Fund, if you don't know about it, they have a web page. Basically, you can donate money and they sponsor different environmental sustainability projects throughout the state. If you're ever flying and you want to offset your flying, you can donate to the Colorado Carbon Fund. It's $20 a ton. So basically, you know, depending on what level your company is at, if you're trying to get to climate neutral, sometimes you get as far as you can get and you can't get any further. And that's where an organization like the Colorado Carbon Fund comes in. The other connection I wanted to make sure everyone understands is the connection between climate change and trash and recycling, and it all goes back to methane. So I think most of you probably know this in this audience, but basically, especially for organic waste, if you have food waste and you throw it in your trash, it goes to the landfill, it goes under anaerobic conditions, which basically means it gets no air and it produces methane. So methane is 21 times more toxic or powerful than carbon dioxide. If you take that same food waste and you put it in a compost, it gets exposed to air, then it only produces carbon dioxide. So that's a great thing to do. But say you don't compost, you don't have a garden, the other great easy thing to do is get a green cone. And you'll see them in a lot of parks around the city. You'll see them at a lot of city buildings. City Hall has one. I know a lot of ClimateWise partners install the green cones, so thank you for all the people that install them. Basically, it looks like a construction cone, and you dig a hole under the ground, and under the ground is like a laundry basket. And all the food goes under there, and then the worms come and eat it, and they digest all the food. So again, it's getting air, and then you don't produce methane. A lot of people put it right in their gardens because everything around it gets nutrient rich. If you have a small garden like I do, I put mine near the side of the garden. Some people put it near their flowers. Some people put it in a part of their yard that doesn't look great, like the brown grass kind of part of the garden. So think about a green cone, because we're always trying to avoid whatever methane we can. So here are some of the reasons. One of the really important reasons about recycling when you're thinking about waste reduction is it's creating more jobs. Stimulates our local economy. It's really important to think about, especially during these kind of tough economic times. The other really important environmental one, other than the methane, is thinking about virgin materials. So the minerals and the water and the trees, these are natural resources that you want to conserve as much as you can. So this is a statistic just about local jobs. So this is for every 10,000 tons of trash. If it just goes to the landfill, that's one job. If it gets, if instead of the aluminum going to the landfill, you're capturing it, you have some kind of collection at your business, that's 10 jobs. If we have a manufacturing company locally, that's 25 jobs. So you have to think, there's some merit in just collecting it, and then there's more merit in closing the loop. So this is just one, I only have one slide about this, but I just wanted to point out that different materials have different effects on the environment. And this is sort of in priority order of if you had to pick and choose, say you didn't have, enough capital to have all different kind of collections, or you're trying to decide what you can get the most return on your investment for, or what has the most environmental impacts. So aluminum and cardboard, those are two areas to really think about in terms of just greenhouse gases or carbon dioxide equivalents that you avoid. So if you had 50 metric tons of these different materials, aluminum versus commingle versus cardboard versus glass versus organics, that's the input. The output you can see on the on your right-hand side. So they have different outputs. So you always have to think, okay, what is my strategy? What could be my priority? So aluminum and cardboard are great ones to think about. When we get in our facilitated discussions, I'll also talk about financial return on investment. So, for organics, it's sometimes a lot more expensive, and there's a lot of reasons for that. I'm not trying to, dissuade anyone from trying to compost or think about the organics, but you need to look at the cost too, and what materials actually are worth more. And then you also have to think about your goals for your business. So, different businesses have different goals. The Brendel Group is now at zero waste. So they're a great group. If your bar is up here and you're trying to set, something high, the Brendel Group would be a great group to talk to. Are you trying to be carbon neutral? Are you just trying to get, just trying to move the needle a little? So people are at different levels. And this afternoon, not this afternoon, but this morning later, we're going to have different breakout tables. And, Kathy Laurie from EcoCycle is here. She's going to just talk to people that are just beginning to get on the bandwagon. And then I'm going to take a more advanced group and say, okay, so you've already done composting, how can we take it to the next level? And my challenge is always, just step it up. So there are different strategies that you can use. At the city, we always try a lot of different projects and different, we always are looking at our process and how we do things. And I can't underestimate education. So this first one, Starve Your Trash, was a little project we did, I think about 2 years ago now, where in an office building, under people's desks, they generally have a trash and recycling can. And what we did was remove the trash can and just left recycling and put this nice little saddle trash bag on it. And what it got people to realize is how fast they filled it up. And then rather than getting a big gulp, some people actually got it in their head that, oh, maybe I should have my reusable cup, or they saw how fast they actually, fill this up. Starve Your Trash was a great educational endeavor. And it seems simple, but people need reminders, and this is a reminder that people see every day. Some other techniques were to broker large volumes. So depending on what your business is, maybe you need to go directly to a paper mill rather than having a local hauler do it. That's something to think about. Another thing to think about is consolidating your contracts. So say in your office you have multiple buildings or multiple sites, and you have somebody collecting aluminum for pizza and somebody collecting aluminum for some other organization. By consolidating your contract, you'll end up seeing that revenue. So in the city, we got almost $80,000 in 2009 for our metals. And one of that was consolidating, and the other point of it was really looking at our processes. And one of the things we hadn't been doing is when there is a water main break, you have those old pipes. And those pipes are worth a lot of money. And so, for a few years, basically the concrete and the metal piping was going to the landfill. So now we separate it all out, and when, the wet soil dries and the metal is dried, it goes to our vendor. So that's a really good thing to think about. The other great part about that is then you have a chunk of money that maybe can be dedicated to sustainability projects. For this one, honestly, I did say, oh, how about, we get some of that money as a light item. That didn't work, but I know PSD does that. PSD does that for their energy challenge. So if a school is really efficient, they get a little of that money back. So I strongly encourage people you have to track how much money you get back, because it doesn't always cost money to do these projects. Some of them you're going to be saving money. And then think about rebates for high quality material. So if you have a contractor and the price of aluminum goes up, part of the contract could be you get 5% of that. This way, the vendor is sort of your partner, your vendor, and that it goes to performance-based contracting too. If you talk to your vendor and say, we want you to help us with our diversion. We did that at the city with our contractor, and so basically, they're the ones that are going and collecting the waste. They're the ones that could say, well, at 215 North Mason, you still have a bunch of cardboard that's not broken down. And if they know they're being evaluated on helping you, They're in the game. I know people don't probably have time to follow the markets, but you know, the markets fluctuate. Sometimes things aren't worth money, sometimes they are. So now, pallets. You know, there's a market for pallets. Cardboard went from $17 a ton to $125. Aluminum is always pretty stable. So, you know, think about these things as a commodity. Don't think about them as trash. Then the other component is reuse. Always try to think about reusing. So, you know, a company, local company, Morning Fresh, you know, if you have a restaurant and you're getting dairy products, they are reusing those bottles. They collect the caps, they contribute to the Poudre School District. Paper, you can always use paper. Recycling paper sometimes has up to 7 uses, so they can use it over and over and over again. I think I have a slide about shredding, but let me just throw it in right here. If you have to shred material, always remember just to shred the part with the you know, identifying information on it. Don't shred the whole paper, because once it's shredded, what happens is when they recycle paper, they have all these like little fibers and they weave it like a, you know, a scarf. And so when you break those fibers, it makes it hard to reuse it. So always think when you're shredding, just to shred that third, don't shred the whole paper. And then think about reuse. So somebody in your business probably has a child in daycare. So before you recycle the paper, bring it to the daycare, let them scribble all over it, then pick it up, and then recycle it. Think about the containers, how you get your supplies. So Grainger in town has really nice containers, and if you have the same vendor for an item, what we do at the city is we bought some containers. They can label them. Grainger will label them, or you can just get a little bumper sticker or some kind of sticker and identifies your company. And so say you always get your paper towels from Green Logic. Give the container to Green Logic so they buy it in bulk, they put it in your container so you're not always having to break down the cardboard. And then the whole reuse, like Green Cartridge. So think about your cartridges. Green Cartridge is a company in town, so you always try to think local too. And then sometimes it's not just about money. So cartridges is a perfect example. We have a few different choices that people at the city have for cartridges. So, you know, the reuse and Green Cartridge is a great option. It's the first option, but some other ideas about cartridges in particular are Access Computers has a list of charities, and one is Cartridges for Kids, and one is the Safe House, which is our organization in town for women and children of domestic violence. So they contribute a certain amount. So take a little item like cartridges, everybody uses that. I think it's really important to think when you pick a vendor about vendors that contribute to the environmental and social fabric of our community. So one of the reasons I was really interested in Cartridges for Kids is PSD, if you don't know it, tracks the kids on free and reduced lunch every year. So in our community, which is a pretty affluent community, we have a school here with 71% of kids on free and reduced lunch. What that means is a family of 4 making less than $38,000 a year. 71% of kids are on that. So, you know, and then at a school like Weber, so my son goes to Weber Junior High. In 1 year, it went from 5% of the kids on free and reduced lunch to 25%. So, you know, you drive around Fort Collins and it might look like everyone has a really nice house and a great yard, but I'm telling you, those statistics, you know, show that there are people in those houses that are not doing very well right now. So if you can take a simple thing like your cartridges and they get a percentage of that money, you know, that's a sustainable way to conduct your business. And actually, Access has a lot of different charities. So they have charities about animal shelters. You know, just ask your vendors about their practices, because you have power in when you choose a vendor. The vendors have different recycling diversion rates. They have a really wide range from 10% to 42%. So, you know, that's an important thing to say. You can say to them, do you use routing software? What kind of fuel do you use? Try to think systematically when you choose your contracts. And this is a simple thing. So one of my pet peeves lately is the whole junk mail. You know, this is something you generally don't want anyway. There's a lot of services online now that will charge you. Don't pay money to get rid of your junk mail. There's free services. This bottom bullet is really shows that it's really hard to get off these junk mail lists, because every time your name is sold, the person that sells it makes 20 cents. So what happens is you can get off the junk mail, and then sooner or later you're back on. So, you know, maybe once a year you have to try to do it. But in the back is a whole handout about how to do it. There's different organizations, there's different mailing lists. Some are for catalogs, some are for credit cards, some are for charitable organizations. A great thing to do for charitable organizations is just write them and say, I am going to donate. I donate every year. Please do not send me return address labels. I don't know if you're like me. I have enough to wallpaper my whole living room. But you know, St. Jude, I always donate to that organization. And I wrote them and I said, just please send me one envelope and I'll make my donation. I really don't need the other material. And then trying to avoid it altogether. So source reduction. There's a new software called Greenprint. We've bought a couple licenses at the city. Basically, it's for if you're downloading stuff off the internet. So if you've ever done like a MapQuest and you get those like, you know, 6 pages when you really only need 2, Greenprint will just print out the part that you need, and so it really saves a lot of paper. The other thing, of course, is, you know, PDFing it, scanning material, not making copies, setting up duplex on your computers. A lot of times it's as simple as showing people how to do it. So even on your computers at home, a lot of them duplex, and people don't even know they duplex. But basically, it's printing preferences, and it's either duplex or left binding. A lot of people, you get there and you're just like, I wouldn't have ever guessed left binding if someone didn't show me how to do it. But that's a good one. The other thing is, if you have a printer and say you have 4 different trays, just designate one tray for recycled material. So say for some reason somebody doesn't want to scan it, they really want to have the one piece, maybe it's an email they got to follow up on or something. Just put the recycled paper in that one tray. And for the people that want to have that piece of paper, they have it. They don't need the backside. Buy in bulk. You know, the food co-op is one of the places in town where you can buy things in bulk and use your same container over and over. I've had the same laundry detergent container for, I bet, 4 years now. Also think about combining when you get material and when you're getting rid of material. So one of the dairy companies in town this summer teamed up with the CSA. So when people get their milk, they can also request their vegetables, their flours, and meat. And so here they are, they're picking up the bottles and then they're dropping off your food. So if you're a restaurant, that is a great, that's a great new service in town. And I know CSA is community supported agriculture. If you don't know that, they are farmers in town that you can buy a share of vegetables or flours. Ranchers do the same thing. And you're supporting the local economy, but you're also supporting not destroying a lot of land. You know, we don't want, you know, it to look like it looks from Denver to Boulder to Fort Collins. It's nice to have some of these land areas that are still used for farming and ranching. And it helps the ranchers and farmers compete with these big agro businesses. You know, they have, you know, a lot of strikes against them. So whenever you can support CSAs, it's a great thing to do. And then you don't get all the packaging. You don't get corn in a plastic container. I mean, corn has, you know, corn has a really nice container as it is. Think about even when you're at the store, not to get plastic. And then buy compostables or regular dishes for your business. In terms of purchasing, also think purchasing in terms of energy efficient appliances. Utilities, Fort Collins Utilities has tons of rebates for all kinds of appliances, and they pick up the appliances and basically they recycle the appliances. So some of the stores will do that, but you know, the beauty of the utilities program is they're taking energy efficient appliances off the market and recycling them. Think about carpeting is a huge problem. It's mostly made from petroleum, so whenever it goes into the landfill, it has a lot of embodied energy that gets wasted. So if you're thinking about carpeting, Interface was a great company. It's in the book, if you've ever read Natural Capitalism. It's one of the stellar, companies that they looked at. And basically, Interface was the first carpet company that came up with squares. So the whole idea about squares is if you have an area that there's a lot of wear and tear on, at Front Range at the library, a lot of people would go back and forth, and so that part would look bad. So that's the part where you might want to get squares. So rather than replacing the whole carpet, you just replace a little piece of it. And then always think about buying material that has recycled content in it. And think about what's in the product. So is it something that's renewable? Is it something that's certified? There's a lot of programs now where you can tell how your product got to be made and manufactured and transported. In our area, it's really good to, if you can, buy beetle kill wood. If you haven't seen beetle kill wood, it's really beautiful. The fungus leaves a kind of a blue tint. And in one of our natural areas, they made some picnic tables from it. It actually has a great look to it. And by buying beetle kill wood, you're helping to create a market so we get some of this wood out of the forest. Because what's happening is our wildfires, the amount of wildfires and also the intensity of the wildfires is increasing in Colorado. And I think we're just going to see that go up and up. Larimer County lost more acres than any other county in Colorado last year by the beetle kill. Then I'll always think about reduced toxicity in the material that you buy. Low VOC paints. If you don't know about VOCs, volatile organic carbons, that is what's sometimes in carpets. It's in that pre-fabric office furniture, and VOCs emit back into the air, and that's where you get like sick building syndrome. That's where you get a lot of asthma and respiratory problems. So you always want to avoid VOC whenever you can. A good thing is to just buy, rather than buying this fabricated wood, get real wood, get unpainted. It's a little less expensive. And then think about locally sourced material. Styrofoam, I'm sure you guys all know about Styrofoam. My take on Styrofoam is just say no whenever you can. Kathy Laurie's here from EcoCycle, and Boulder's probably the only place where they have an option for Styrofoam other than peanuts. Some of the shipping companies will take back peanuts, but even at Charm, what they do is they just densify it and ship it out of state. It's not, it's not a great solution. I was talking at St. Paul's on Sunday, talk about sustainability, and someone showed me a cup that said 6 on the bottom, so she goes, oh, can this be recycled? And it can't. And so people get confused because they're like, oh, 1 to 7 is good, and so they bought that, and I'm like, no, just try to avoid it. The other thing to remember about plastics, if you're thinking about avoiding plastics, 3 and 7 are the one that have health warnings about it. So if you're going to buy any kind of plastics, check on the bottom and check the numbers. You definitely want to avoid 3 and 7, especially if you're thinking about like baby bottles or anything that you're going to be consuming. A good alternative, if you have to think about packaging, is Waste Not. Anita Comer, I think most of you know her. So Waste Not is starting a new sort of branch of their company, and it's to convert cardboard into animal bedding. And this is really exciting because, again, it's going to be a local process where basically we're getting cardboard locally, we're giving it. We have a lot of vet hospitals here. We have a lot of students that went through the vet hospitals and have vet clinics. So we have a lot of need for animal bedding. But the other great thing about the product, it started out as animal bedding, but another great use for it is packaging. So say you're packaging something that might break, it's really absorbent. And so you could use it for packaging, so rather than getting the peanuts, go with the packaging material from Waste Not. And Todd brought some, so maybe you guys could pass it around. see what it looks like. Another area that has a lot of volume is construction debris. So in the back is a little information about the crushing facilities at Hoffman Mill Road. So I don't know if you know this, but the streets recycles a lot of concrete and asphalt and now porcelain. So how we got porcelain in there is, again, Utilities has a rebate for WaterSense toilets. WaterSense toilets use less water, so if you are replacing your toilets, you get $35 if you show you bought a WaterSense toilet. If you take your old toilet, take the metal off, and bring it up to Resource, you get another $15. So then rather than having all those toilets go to the landfill, those toilets get crushed up and used as street base. One thing that I love about it is we avoided 90,000 metric tons of greenhouse gases. We avoided at that facility more greenhouse gases than the rest of the whole municipality emitted. We emitted, I think, like 69,000. So it is a great thing. Concrete has a really, really strong carbon emission factor. So whenever you can recycle recycle concrete, that's a great thing to do. It also yielded almost $500,000 in savings. So rather, again, than getting new material, we're reusing that material. So some of the asphalt and concrete, that was from, the sidewalks. There's a tree, the root, it all cracks. So think when you're doing some remodeling to bring it over to the crushing operation. And here's some other alternatives. So, the one I mentioned is right in town, but, say you have bricks. Say you have plumbing supplies. So Resource is a great alternative in town. There's, the scrap metal recycling companies in town. Fort Collins website has a whole website just dedicated to recycling, different sources. Anna in our Natural Resource Department, she spends a lot of time updating the web page, so it's always important to, even if you've been on the web page and you're like, oh, there's no alternative for bricks, go on there because it constantly gets updated. Another thing people might not know about is when you donate to a resource, there's a tax break that you can get. So rather than going and paying $17 to dispose of something, bring it to Resource and they will give you a receipt and you get a tax break. So that's another reason to do it. And then you're putting material into the community that people can use. A lot of people go when they're doing remodeling and look at Resource or Habitat for Humanity before they go to Home Depot, and that's what you want to be doing. And the other thing is sometimes it keeps historical material in the community. A lot of the old buildings have beautiful wood that you don't even see anymore. When I worked out in California, we had an old science building that we were tearing down, and I had carpenters come in and get some of the material. I still have a beautiful jewelry box that one of the guys made me, just because it was beautiful maple that you never can see. And then e-waste, again, most of you probably know about it, but electronic wastes are banned from going into the landfill. So there's a few alternatives. Your local haulers will pick it up for a fee. Best Buy has some new programs where you can trade in some of the things. And then Eco Thrift in town. Eco Thrift, again, they have a social, program that goes on where they have specific days they dedicate to nonprofits in the community. So if you haven't gone there, go and visit them. The textiles recycling is gaining momentum. There's a few different options in town. Larimer County has one now dedicated to boys and girls. There's Eco Thrift, there's Use It Again. And so it's important, especially if you have kids that go through their clothes like every 6 months, to think about how you can reuse those. We're a consumer society. I saw some statistics the other day. One is that one American child uses 6 times the resources of a child in China and 32 times the resources of a child in Kenya. So you have to think, I'm not saying don't buy things, but think about what you buy and think about alternative gifts. So rather than some kind of swag or some kind of a, gift that maybe somebody doesn't want. Think of alternative gifts. So my favorite, this is what everybody who is probably a friend of mine is going to get for Christmas this year, is green energy. So Utilities has, it's called a one-time contract. And so for $10 over what somebody's bill is, so say my bill is $145, I subscribe to green energy. So I pay an extra $10, 90% of the energy in my house is from wind. But you can buy a wind contract for your neighbor. And so like I'll say to Deb Harris, Deb always helps me out, and so I'm gonna get her a $10, I'm gonna get her some wind for Christmas. That's gonna be like her gift. So think of something, especially if you have giveaways or, you know, employee of the month, you know, that is a great present. The other thing is, again, think about local companies. So there's 2 in town that are closing the loop. One is they make these nice, and these are both like online companies. One has nice bags made from recycled material, and the other is the old beanbag chairs, but they're not, you know, inside is recycled plastic. So on Bailey and EcoSac. The other thing is, think about getting a present in the name of something. So Happy Heart Farms, they have a program where they have some of their produce is dedicated to feeding families in need. So, you know, it's like that heifer idea. You know, you can buy a family a goat or a rabbit. This is a local version of that. And then think about products, again, that are made from recycled material. So Avita, their nice shampoo in the tubs, those are all from recycled lids. And they also will take lids. If you go and get your hair cut, you could bring your lids there. And it takes some planning. So, you know, you have to think ahead of time. If you're going to do an event or you're trying to, you know, step up your recycling, you have to think, what are my inputs? What is my budget? What will success be? So, you know, we always shoot for 0 waste, but, you know, we have events where we had a little waste, like, you know, the summer picnic. I think we had 32 gallons. That's not bad for a big picnic in the park. So, you know, it's not always going to be 0, but the whole idea is to shoot for some level. And then get to know all the sources in town. So, you know, for food waste, we have a few different options now. Clean air composting has an option now for businesses and residents. And there's people in town. So John, could you, I'm sure people know you, but could you just put, so John is, you know, the famous worm guy. He can always help you in terms of recycling food waste. There's event suppliers, so Green Logic on Linden Street. They have a lot of material that you can buy, so you make sure you're going to reduce your waste. There's people that will help you plan. So John Long, Zero Hero, and founded the Rocky Mountain Sustainable Living Fair. He knows how to do huge events. So even if no matter what the level is, there are great experts in town. There's a new consultant, Green Stream, that will go and just help your business. So, you know, sometimes you might have a vendor in who's trying to, you know, sell you a product, but, you know, sometimes if you have a third-party consultant, that's a good way to go too, because it might, even though a consultant might seem expensive, it might save you time in the long run. And again, there's always new companies coming on board, so please check the Fort Collins Recycling webpage. This Colorado Recycling Services, they are now doing carpets and mattresses. And not that a lot of businesses will have mattresses, but in a college town, getting rid of mattresses will be a great thing for us. But carpets, everyone has carpets, so here's a you know, alternative. I'm going to switch gears a little and just talk about some of the city projects. Sometimes it might seem too expensive to change the way you operate. So one thing that the city started doing was the forestry division teamed up with Poudre School District. And we couldn't buy a big mulcher. They were really expensive. So what we do was we leased it just for a couple days, and we leased it with Poudre School District. And we save costs that way. And basically, rather than having this large diameter wood, again, go out to the landfill, We mulched it all, and that mulch goes into streetscaping and landscaping at the parks, and it's available for residents at Garden on Spring Creek and out at Rivendell, the drop-off center. So, if there's something that, your business thinks, well, I'd like to do that, but it's so expensive. I mean, this morning you'll have a little time to maybe talk with another business where you can share the costs. Some other projects that the city has started this year, if you haven't seen the Big Belly solar compactors, there's one at Roland Moore and there's one in Oak Street, and basically they look just like a regular trash can, but right up here, this is a solar panel, and the solar panel is a compactor, so it compacts all the waste. So especially at Oak Street, the guys used to go and pick it up every day, and now they only have to go like once a week. So you lessen the transportation footprint of coming and picking up the trash. The other one is the Earth Vessel, and that is like a gigantic composting vessel. And so that's a project that we're working with a local restaurant, Austin's, and Rob, the bike courier, is picking it up. And that whole idea is, again, taking organics and producing compost from it. The other projects, not so new, but very important projects. We have the separated glass campaign, and the idea about that is when you separate out your glass, a much higher percentage gets recycled. So if glass is in with the commingled, there's a chance that it gets broken and not as much gets recycled. So if you can, it's always better to separate out your glass. And these are three facilities where you can drop off glass. The other thing to remember about glass is brown is the color of choice. So it's not just about dark beer, it's about dark bottles. So if you're ever trying to choose white, green, brown, go with brown. And then again, it's just there's a lot less energy involved in reusing glass than new glass because the mullet takes a lot less to process. The glass recycling project has been going on for years. This is with a lot of restaurants, and you'll see Rob around town if you haven't. He picks these all up on bikes. I threw out a lot of ideas. On the back table, there's some different ideas about challenging people. To try to change people's behavior, a lot of times it's difficult. People are just used to doing the way they do things. But my take on it is that's what makes a leader. You have to disturb the comfortable a little. Some things aren't even painful, like the start of your trash can, or, deciding your cartridges are going to go to a charity in town. That's not painful at all. And so just think of different things to change people's behavior. One of the most important parts are making sure they have the information of what gets recycled and what doesn't. So a lot of times the stream changes, and so people don't know, like all of a sudden clamshells were fine to recycle. What you put your strawberries and blueberries in, people didn't know that. Your prescription bottles, they can go in there. Your plastic containers you get your plants in. All these things. So as new things get added, a lot of time that information doesn't get to businesses or residents. So it's important to have some kind of, and we have these recycling guides in the back, some kind of guide so people know, and it's clearly labeled in your business so people don't go, I'm not sure, I'm not going to put it in. So just have everything clearly labeled. This is the back side of our recycling guide. This is all the hard to recycle things in town. So what happens is sometimes people do the right thing. They might have got their CFLs, and then they read about the mercury, and then they go, what do I do now? So the city's teamed up with a lot of the hardware stores. They'll take back your CFLs. Or pharmaceuticals. You have to try to keep pharmaceuticals out of the waste stream. And so, Good Day Pharmacy will take back pharmaceuticals. Another easy thing is mix it with kitty litter, and then it doesn't leach out. The police department just did a great pharmaceutical take back. They collected 300 pounds of pharmaceuticals to keep it out of the water system last month, and that was the national program that went on. But again, if you have questions like, I have some kind of a product, I don't know where it goes, just pick up the phone and call us or go on the website. Challenge sheets. One is for restaurants, one is for businesses, and one is for residents. And so at the city, because we're a ClimateWise partner, we always do at least 2 challenges. So our challenge last month was a solid waste challenge. And it has really specific things to prep people, and then on the back side is different activities that they can try. It has how much money you save, how many greenhouse gases you avoid, and so it's just a nice little pledge sheet. If you want to try it with your company, go ahead and try it. I could help you do the calculations and figure out, collectively we've saved, this much. Last year we did be a superhero for sustainability. In 1 month, the city workers avoided 13 tons of greenhouse gases. And I forget the financial savings, but they all have financial savings and environmental savings. So it's good to collectively do something so people go, oh, how much difference does it make whether I recycle this 1 can? But collectively, it makes a huge difference. And then the resources in town. So Rose Watson is here. She's an amazing person. If you need to pick somebody's brain, she runs the garbage garage. If you haven't been there, it's really enlightening. I know it doesn't seem like maybe, like going to the zoo, but it's a great place, so go and talk to her. And then there's general resources. So there's a lot up, on the website, not just our website, but these are some of my favorite ones about conducting meetings or about different products, how to choose products. If people have questions. Okay, oh, sorry. The question was, where is the picnic tables made from pine beetle kill? And I think they're at Bobcat, but I'll double check and guess. So the question was, is there a specific vendor that has a pine beetle kill? Okay, JP Morgan is the company in Fort Collins, or Morgan Timber. And then Walter Chapman, and I'll get that number during the break.
So today I'm going to talk about Beyond the Bin, so really advanced conservation. And before I begin, I want to know, do any companies here that are in the room do any advanced recycling besides just single stream composting? Can I get a raise of hands? So about 5, 6, that's pretty good. 7, about 7 companies. So the reason why advanced Beyond the Bin, advanced resource conservation is so important. It really is a mindset. It's a total shift beyond single stream recycling, beyond composting even. Okay, so today I'm going to just talk about, give a quick introduction of EcoCycle and talk about why go beyond the bin, the bin, excuse me. 4 basic principles of advancing your hard to recycle resources, and I'm going to talk a couple case studies that EcoCycle worked with 2 different organizations on advancing their hard to recycle materials, and also talk about some of those challenges that go along with this. And EcoCycle also created an Earn Your Stripes campaign, which was a fantastic incentive program for businesses to really get them motivated. So EcoCycle was founded about 34 years ago. And what I love about the organization is it really started grassroots with school buses picking up recyclables across the city in Boulder. So it did start one of the first curbside programs in the country, and also it created the first Center for Hard to Recycle Materials. So EcoCycle's hard to recycle collection services, this is a drop-off center that anyone can go to, and we take a ton of different items that are extremely hard to recycle, just to name a few. So e-scrap, which is electronics and TVs, even microwaves, and then we take block styrofoam, and this is only block styrofoam. So as Rosemarie mentioned earlier, there is styrofoam that's food grade. We do not take any food grade styrofoam, and I'm just saying that because a lot of people get confused because it has the number 6 resin symbol on it, and it cannot be collected at the charm. We take shoes and textiles. The shoes go to the Nike Regrind program, and they're turned into playgrounds and tracks. And then also, just to go back to the styrofoam, that's actually converted into light switches and CD cases. And then of course we take toilets and seats and bicycle parts, cooking oil, you name it. So what we noticed is back in 2006, that businesses create a lot of hard to recycle materials, and often is very hard for them to find out what to do with these materials. So in 2006, EcoCycle started a charm on the road, and where they would go to businesses and collect the material. So our process for handling these materials is very similar to single stream, but we do try to keep it local. So first, obviously, identify the materials, and then find viable markets. And again, the big emphasis is local, because local creates local jobs. And then we partner with the businesses to collect the items and then also get those to market. So I'm going to put in a little plug here, because I think this would be really valuable if you're interested in advancing your resource and conservation efforts, to go out to CHARM. They do tours of the facility. It's really fascinating. So here's the information. It's 5030 Old Pearl. I do have a little map here because it's a bit confusing, because there's Pearl Street and then there's Old Pearl, but the information is on the ecocycle.org website. So why go beyond the bin? Rosemary spoke about this already, so I'll just touch on it real briefly. And this, I'm going to talk about a population scenario here. So does anybody know what % of the US makes up the world's population? Can anybody just shout out a number?
4.8%.
There you go. Very precise. Love that. Do you know how many of our resources in the US that we consume globally compared to the rest of the world?
34.
It's about 30%. And the waste that we produce from that, of course, is almost equal to the resources we consume, so roughly 30%. Now, China has a fairly large population. What is that population base, roughly? Anyone? It's about 20%. They make up about 20% of the world's population, right? And they want a similar lifestyle that we do. So can you imagine if they consumed as much as we do? So regardless of where you are in the environmental debate on this, one thing we know for sure is the math doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense to take resources and toss them into the trash, because frankly, those resources are needed by the population that we have here in the United States, but also around the world. So why go beyond the bin? It's very clear. We just do not have enough resources to extract and cut down with the current population growth and the future projected growth. And also, recycling, as Rosemary pointed out, really creates less pollution. And the biggest, everybody can agree with this, across all political, ideological perspectives, recycling creates jobs, and lots of jobs. So how to get to zero? There are 4 basic principles. And the first step is commitment. So commitment is, again, Rosemary spoke about this, so I'm going to touch on this point. But the commitment is to just making that commitment to change a mindset. And typically that looks at your purchasing and your manufacturing and what your outputs. So your input is everything that the company is taking in. And so looking at your purchasing practices, making sure that you have a high recycled content, low toxicity in your materials that you're purchasing, and then also evaluating the goods and services that you produce. And so those are important commitments to just even beginning the process. And part of that commitment is setting goals. And this is a basic business model, right? For any business to be successful, you have to set goals, be that they're financial goals or goals of output. And it's the same with recycling. And then this seems basic, but it is important. And the reason why I focus on this is before you advance to hard to recycle materials, you have to have at least a basic single stream recycling infrastructure and a commitment to training your employees to that. Because really, going beyond the bin takes a lot of commitment for your single stream. If you can't start with single stream and there's not an infrastructure and commitment to that, then advancing your recycling and waste diversion efforts probably won't be as successful. It's really the first step to behavior change. So I love this picture. This is actually some of my friends that work down in Antarctica on global climate change. And so step 3 and 4 is really taking that huge leap But it isn't that big of a leap, really, but it's a big reward. But for some companies, it does seem like a really big leap, and that next step is composting. So the reason why I say that can be a big leap for some companies is because there tends to be a cost associated with composting. It's also a new behavior change. I'm sure you have noticed that more communities are incorporating composting into their residential, and it is starting to overflow into commercial. And Fort Collins is doing a really great job of really tackling compost in the commercial sector. There tends to be a cost associated with it versus single stream recycling, which tends to not have a cost. And there is an additional infrastructure that you have to put in place. And of course, training is critical. But for the greenhouse gas emissions that you're saving when you compost, you're going to have the biggest bang for your buck. So that's really important. So then we go to that final step here, and this is what I'm going to really focus on with the case studies, is hard to recycle. It's critical to reducing the most toxic materials in your waste stream. And also, when you create those public-private partnerships, you're going to create a lot of jobs in your community. And you're going to become a hero as a result of that. And also, if you have sustainability goals within your company and you want to move towards zero waste, frankly, without tackling your hard to recycle materials, you can't get there. So I'm going to go over two really creative case studies that EcoCycle worked with. One is a smaller organization, University Bicycles, and one is actually several large pharmaceutical companies where we tackled hard to recycle materials. So the first is University Bicycles. And University Bicycles, I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with them. They're pretty popular, and they're very popular in Boulder. They're one of the most popular and busiest bike shops in Boulder. And like all bike retailers, they have a large volume of hard to recycle materials, especially bike tires, bike tubes, scrap metal, plastic bags. So their challenge was they were working with EcoCycle on the plastic bags, which we now have a market for. By the way, plastic bags go to a company called Trex, and it's made into alternative decking material. But and we also had a market for scrap metal, of course. So that we could help them with those two items. But bike tires and bike tubes was really new. So what EcoCycle did is they formed partnerships. And this was with actual local companies, or companies here in Colorado. With the bike tires, we were able to find a company, Magnum Recycling, that takes those bike tires and turns them into new bike tires, which is really exciting. They also take car tires as well, but they're a really innovative recycling company here in Colorado. So those jobs stay in Colorado. And the bike tubes, now this is really fun. Bike tubes were sent to a company called Green Guru. And Green Guru is a very creative company that takes these tubes and turns them into messenger bags. And there's actually a company in Fort Collins that does sell these bags, and it's Green Logic. You're taking a hard to recycle item, keeping jobs in the community local, but also creating a product that is so innovative and creative that you can sell it across the country. The question is, how are they using the material for the messenger bags? Are they melting them down, or what are they doing? They're actually taking those tubes and they're sewing them together, and so they're using them intact. They're not melting them down, or it's a reuse process more than recycle. That's a great question. So the collection piece, I'm sorry, I didn't talk about that as much. So what EcoCycle, thank you. So what EcoCycle does is with the Charm on the Road program, EcoCycle provides totes for companies that have hard to recycle materials, collects the material, and then sells it to the vendors. We do charge for that service. For a bike store such as University Bicycles, the cost is, I'm guessing here, but it's about, I think, $50 a month. So it's a reasonable cost because the items are being sold. Sometimes the items have to be sold at cost or sometimes at a loss depending on where the market is. As some of you know, how many businesses here are retailers? Are there a show of hands of any retail? Okay, retail operations. As you know, retail environments tend to have limited space. So as with university bicycles, one of the challenges that they had was limited space, but they made it really easy for their employees by making sure that all of their bins were color-coded underneath their tables where they work on the bikes. And they had the guidelines that corresponded with the color-coded bins all over the store. And then on top of that, they made sure as part of the culture of the organization. So day one, when employees starts at University Bicycles, the first thing that they do is go through their recycling guidelines, and they tell them how everything works, where the bins are. They're very clearly, as you can see from this picture, they're really clear. And so that employee training is critical to success, because with a hard to recycle program, contamination just cannot happen. So just to recap real quickly, University Bicycles, I mean, they had a commitment to zero waste, and so they instilled it into their company culture. And they already recycled, so they had that basic infrastructure, but they wanted to go beyond. And with working with EcoCycle and creating those partnerships, they were able to divert a lot of their waste. And the results are significant. Before they had their hard to recycle program and they moved towards zero waste, they had 6 yards of trash hauled 3 times per week. They had a 2-yard dumpster hauled every other week. And per the manager, he's a fantastic guy, but he said, you know what, honestly, before we started zero waste, we barely had that dumpster full, and it wasn't a consistent program. Today, they have 6 yards of recycling hauled 3 times per week. Their trash is now a 2-yard dumpster hauled once per week, and now they have 3 totes with their hard recycled materials. And the employees love the program, they talk about it, and they've gotten great PR and marketing. And also this differentiates them from other bike stores, because a lot of bike retailers are not doing what they're doing. So the next case study is on a much larger scale, and I want to also let you know that this is a pilot program that we're working on. But the reason why I think this is such an important program is it just shows you that how collectively local companies can work together to really find ways to divert their hard to recycle materials. So Boulder County is home to some of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. That's just a few of them there listed. And pharmaceutical companies create large volumes of hard to recycle materials. So just to name a few. So the number 6 white block foam, and the plastic bags, and electronics, and pipette trays. I'm going to go into pipette trays. You'll notice it's underlined. The first 3 hard to recycle materials, EcoCycle already had commodities for. Of course, the block styrofoam, the plastic bags, electronics, already established. Pipette trays, we didn't even know what those were. So when the pharmaceutical companies approached us and said, we have a challenge here. We go through a lot of pipette trays, and we want to divert that waste. So pipette trays, they're used in the pharmaceutical industry, and they're basically single-use containers. They cannot be reused again. And so they are made of typically number 5 virgin polypropylene, or the number 7 plastic. And number 7 plastic, by the way, is that kind of unknown plastic. It tends to be of various resins, and it's really hard for recyclers typically to process. Pipette trays cannot be recycled through single stream, and often I'm asked why, and it's because it's so rigid it can't be baled. And pharmaceutical companies create a huge amount of this. So EcoCycle started working with these companies to find solutions, and we started a pilot. And the pilot program was, of course, to first find, back to the basics, what's a viable market for these trays? How do we divert these? How do we divert this material from the waste stream? And we found a vendor, a molder, who is actually able to take those pipette trays, because in the recycling of plastic process, you typically have to wash those items. With pipette trays, because it's virgin plastic, they don't have to be washed. And so this molder was going to be able to take those pipette trays and process them himself and mold that plastic into buckles for bags. So now what we're doing is we're collecting the pipette trays. We need about 40,000 pounds, or enough for one trailer, to get these to market. So the biggest challenge for the pharmaceutical companies and for EcoCycle is storage. And that's because, of course, the pharmaceutical industry has limited storage, and so does EcoCycle, but we're working together with both parties willing to collect the trays. And we cannot take the number 7 pipette trays because of the unknown resin, and it's too difficult for that recycler to take that item. So one of the biggest components, or the important component of that, is that education is critical to making this pilot successful, because the employees at the pharmaceutical companies need to make sure that they do not put those number 7 pipette trays into their program. And so again, with any waste diversion programs, education is critical to the success. And then, of course, coordinating with the processor and the local buyers. So these are really exciting opportunities, because the goal is to be able to make these buckles and then sell them to local markets. So in Boulder, we have 2 great companies that would be willing to take these buckles, GoLite and Pearl Izumi. And they're companies that have huge sustainability goals. They're also zero waste partners with EcoCycle. And so it's going to be a beautiful marriage, if you will, of taking a local market, taking this item that would otherwise go to the landfill, creating a new product, and then selling it to local companies. And it also provides the pharmaceutical company with a great story about closed loop manufacturing. There are lots of ways that EcoCycle is able to help companies divert as much of their waste as possible. But for many companies, not only is it just part of a core value that they instill within their corporate culture, but also they want the marketing and PR that goes with that. So EcoCycle has done a great program called Earn Your Stripes. This provides companies the opportunity to distinguish themselves from their competitors, and also let the community know that they're working towards zero waste, and for every item that they divert from the waste stream, or when they change their purchasing practices, they get a stripe. And these stripes are really visible on the storefronts of all of these companies, and we also have awards that we also recognize our zero waste community partners. We also list them on our website, and there's a lot of literature that goes out about the companies that are willing to divert waste and move towards zero waste. So these are important programs, and they're great incentives for businesses. And that is my presentation. So are there any questions? And that's a great question. So let me go ahead and repeat that. So one of the questions was, for the pharmaceutical companies that do have the number 7 pipette trays, are they going back to the supplier and saying, I don't want to use those trays? That is a recommendation that EcoCycle has made as part of the pilot program. I can't tell you for sure that they have gone through with those recommendations, but it is very important. And that actually goes with any partner that we work with. For example, we're working with a partner, a retail organization that gets a lot of number 5 plastic bags. Well, we can't take number 5 plastic bags. And they do recycle their number 2 and number 4, and it's the same thing. That's always our recommendation. Go back to your vendors as a company and tell them what you will and will not accept. And that's very critical to reducing your hard to recycle materials. Yeah, well, yes, actually the Center for Hard to Recycle Materials will take your pipette trays. Mm-hmm. But right now, the whole program is funneled through the Charm on the Road, because the pharmaceutical companies love having the collection of those materials. At this point in the program, we wouldn't want them to market it because it is a pilot program. So once we're able to truly close that loop, make sure those items get to the recycler and to the market. We've only been in this pilot program for about 3 months. So we're in the process of collection. And again, we have found the recycler, and we are pretty sure that we have loose commitments from the people who are willing to purchase those items. So to answer your question though, how to market that, because there isn't a window clean, is that for a lot of companies, such as the pharmaceutical industry, they do have sustainability goals and they want to be considered good community stewards. So ways that they can do that are they can put the information onto their website, they can put it into the reports for the community, and also for their shareholders. So those are ways that they can get the word out, and they can also send out press releases, which we highly recommend as well. So those are ways that bigger companies who divert their hard to recycle materials, even pipette trays aside, just hard to recycle materials, and they also want people to know about their sustainability goals, they would incorporate their waste reduction into their sustainability reports, just like they would for recycling or for energy or for water reduction. And that's what I would recommend. Well, and I'm going to touch on specifically the hard to recycle materials. So the goal of the hard to recycle program is really to keep those materials in Colorado because it creates a lot of jobs. So, and Rosemary touched on this, and this is really important, that recycling creates an enormous amount of jobs. You know, landfill, it's a 1 to 10 ratio of just landfill to basic recycling, and it goes up when you move into hard to recycle materials. So for the Center for Hard to Recycle Materials, there's probably about, I don't know the exact percentage, but it's probably about 70% of those commodities do stay local and are processed locally. And then the trend is going or moving towards recycling staying in the United States, if that's your question. There's definitely items that are going overseas. For example, even cardboard, which is not a hard to recycle material, but the reason why I want to touch on that is cardboard is in great demand by China, in great demand. So they're willing to collect and pay a premium for that product to go and they'll recycle it back in China, and then of course reuse or even sell that material back to other countries such as the United States. But the point is that these resources, the trends are that the prices are going to go up, and the most important thing that we can do as a community is let our politicians know that the policies that we want are to help create infrastructure to keep those jobs here. So that's really the trend I see, is that those jobs will stay in the United States. And also the price for these commodities across the board, they will only go up because we are running out of resources. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Good morning. About a little over a year ago, we bought an electrolyzed water system for Avago to replace a lot of the cleaning chemicals that we use on site. This system, or systems like it, are used in Russia and Japan primarily, been used for decades in the food, medical, dental industries, and it's slowly gaining acceptance in the United States. It's going through a lot of testing, or they're trying to get it approved with the EPA. So right now in the United States, you won't see it being used in the medical industry. However, it is being used in prisons. It's being used in hotels, a lot of hotels, schools. Essentially, this is a drawing of a basic drawing of what the machine looks like. There are 3 elements. It's tap water, low voltage electric current, and salt, sodium chloride. So tap water is passed through the 2 electrolyzing chambers. One chamber is positively charged, the other is negatively charged. In a separate chamber is saturated saline solution, and it's circulated through the chamber, lined on both sides with an ion permeable membrane. I'm not a scientist, but hopefully this will kind of give you some idea exactly how it works. I do have information on a little thumb drive if anybody's got their computer and they wanted to download that, or if you'd like for me to email it to you, I can as well. But then there are 2 tubes that feed into tanks below. And the result is hypochlorous acid in one tank and sodium hydroxide in the other. Hypochlorous acid is a highly effective but non-toxic sanitizer that kills most bacteria and viruses on contact. It's 10 times more effective than bleach, and it has a shelf life of a minimum of 60 days. There are other processes out there that don't use the salt, that are kind of an instant squirt bottle type thing that's charged right in the bottle. It lasts 45 seconds. This actually has a fairly decent shelf life. The shelf life for the sodium hydroxide is unlimited, and the sodium hydroxide is a mild degreaser. Neither solution requires any mixing, special storage, handling, or even protective wear. I've got bottles of this here. I'm going to pass this stuff around so you can see. The red is the acidic water, or the hypochlorous acid, and it doesn't bleach your clothes. It has a little bit of a bleachy, just a slight bleachy smell to it. And you can actually put it in your mouth and it's not going to hurt you. So this is why it's used in prisons. They have the inmates cleaning the facility. This is not going to hurt people. And in the blue is the sodium hydroxide, and this is the degreaser. The sodium hydroxide, see, go ahead and change slides. Let's go with the pH. Water is at 7. This acid water is that of vinegar, like at 3, and the sodium hydroxide is just a notch below ammonium. So pass it around, take a smell. Actually, you can put the blue in your mouth. It will not hurt you. So yeah, we don't require any protective eyewear or even gloves. I mean, if you're using lemon juice, yeah, you might want to use gloves. It's not, but it's not required by our EHS department. So this is a picture of our system. We have two 40-gallon tanks. The box up at the top, that is sort of the drawing, what I showed you in the other slide. It comes down, it's all gravity fed. We fill bottles, our carpet cleaning machine, from this tube, these tubes below. It's very, very simple. It's just a plug-in into a regular outlet. The cost of to produce the water is basically the cost of water. So less than a penny a gallon. You're saving the cost of transportation. When you buy chemicals, the cost of packaging, the cost of their marketing, even the cost of storing, when you're storing chemicals. So very inexpensive in that way. The uses for the sanitizer, you can use it in your bathrooms, sinks, toilets, urinals, floors. It's great in schools. Before we purchased the system, I talked to a few different school districts that use it throughout the country, and they said that they've actually seen a reduction in absenteeism because they spray every night. They would mist down the desks and anything that the kids touch, tables and chairs, and so it kills all the nasties. People use it to sanitize their kitchens. It preserves and extends the life of fish, chicken, fruits, vegetables, and even fresh flowers. You can put it in a vase of fresh flowers and they will last longer. It sanitizes athletic equipment. We use it on our handrails, doorknobs at work. You can clean ice machines, garbage cans, anything that you can think of that you need to sanitize. It also works as a deodorizer. It's great on windows and mirrors. And you can use it to sanitize carpets. However, we typically use our alkaline water for our carpets. Hard floors, any kind of hard surfaces, we use it to clean our coffee stations. Actually, no, that's wrong. We use our sanitizer to clean the coffee stations. But you can use it in any way you might use an all-purpose cleaner. Now, I've taken this stuff home. My husband loves it on our stove. The degreaser on our stove. It works great. He uses it on our grill. It works really well. As I said, it's inexpensive to operate, less than a penny a gallon. There is the cost savings of chemical purchases, reduced risk to employees. maybe your employees get exposed to chemicals and they have work comp issues because of that. As an example, the sanitizer with a 5-second dwell time, it'll kill E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria, and a 10-second dwell time, it'll kill Staphylococcus. And they say, I've got a independent lab report that says it will kill 99.9% of anything if left on with a 5-minute dwell time. So even the worst kills anthrax, all that kind of stuff. Anything that you want to kill, except for yourself. So, okay. The challenges that we have is the acceptance by the custodians. And I shadowed one of our custodians Friday night, and I was cleaning bathrooms, and I noticed she wasn't using it on the toilets. I said, well, why aren't you using it on the toilets? She says, well, because it doesn't work as well. We want to make sure that we kill all the germs. I said, well, and do you think that this works better? Well, yeah. Why does that work better? How do you know that that works better? And she didn't have an answer for it. But because it doesn't have a fragrance, it doesn't foam, it's cold, I mean, it's room temperature, it can't be working, right? It just looks like water. They do use it in a lot of places. They use it on the mirrors and in the coffee stations and on handrails, but they haven't quite gotten to the toilet thing yet. So the other limitation is the tank size. Our carpet cleaner, we've got a big ride-on carpet cleaner that takes 25 gallons of the alkaline water, and it will only replenish at about 15 gallons per hour, and yet the carpet cleaner can go through those 25 gallons in about 45 minutes. So we do have some storage issues we need to work out, maybe getting an auxiliary tank perhaps during the day so it can replenish for the evening carpet cleaning. It's fairly costly. It cost us $10,000 to install it. We figured our return on that investment would be about 3 years. However, if the custodians haven't quite gotten in, they're still buying some of the chemicals that they used to buy, that's going to lengthen that return on investment. And the acidic water will start to lose its effectiveness after 60 days, which it never doesn't last 60 days at our site because we use it before that. That's basically it. Does anybody have any questions? Yes. Yes. I have talked to some pretty major hotels that use it. Resort hotels there was one on the Gulf Coast in Florida, and it's 137 rooms, and that is all they use. And so that's a pretty good sized facility. Yeah, you might need to get bigger tanks.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty well used. And school districts, I mean, so those school buildings are really large too. One school district I talked to said they had 3 buildings, but they actually only had one system. So they wound up their challenge was not having to buy another system. They would actually haul the water from one building to the next. So, but yes. Well, you can go online and you can read things that are negative about this type of system. There are different companies that sell it, but what I was reading was, well, it's not very. You can't market it. You can't sell it at the store because the shelf life is 60 days for the sanitizer. And they'll say, well, you can't electrically charge water and make these different chemicals. Well, no, you can't electrically charge water and make those different chemicals because you're not putting salt in it. The sodium chloride's an important piece of it. And they also are saying that it's very expensive, and it is. It would be expensive for a small business to purchase unless you've got a big enough facility that uses a lot of chemicals to clean. You probably wouldn't be able to do it. So there are some drawbacks that way. As far as its effectiveness, I don't think that's being disputed. I haven't seen it be disputed. It seems to work really well. We really like it with the challenges that I explained. Some of the acceptance it's not mainstream. It's a little bit different. I would like to mention too that the system that I purchased, the company has sold the system, and talked to the guy the other day, and he says, I can't tell you anything about it because he's under a confidentiality. It's going to be coming out by a major company who's going to be basically remarketing it, repackaging it, and it'll be available here probably by the first of the year. But if you Google it, you'll find out, you can read a lot about it. There are different companies. I believe Sanyo's got a system that they're selling right now. There are a few different companies that actually sell the system. Okay, thank you.